In 2004, the most expensive brand acquisition in spirits history was announced. $2.2 billion. Cash. Not installments, not stock options, actual money wired in one direction. The company paying it? One of the largest alcohol corporations on the planet. The product they were buying? Something that ranked 8th out of 12 in a blind taste test. 8th out of 12. And here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. They knew. Not the ranking, that detail they possibly missed. But they knew before the wire transfer cleared that the advertising behind this brand had already been ruled misleading by a federal review board, that competitors had publicly challenged the brand's core claim in court, that the entire premium positioning rested not on the liquid inside the bottle, but on a set of psychological tricks carefully installed in the human brain over 7 years. They paid $2.2 billion for a trick, and the trick stopped working almost immediately after they bought it. By the end of this video, you will understand 3 things. 1. What was actually inside the Grey Goose bottle? Not the story, the science. 2. How the largest corporate due diligence failure in drinks history happened in broad daylight with lawyers in the room. And 3. Why the same mechanism that broke this deal is currently being used to price things you buy every single week. You think you know the Grey Goose story. You've seen the headlines. You've heard about France and wheat and limestone water. But you haven't heard it from this angle. Nobody has told you about the moment the machine broke and who was left holding the parts. Let's go back to the beginning. Not the brand launch. Before that. 1995. America has a problem it doesn't recognize as a problem. The economy is booming. Disposable income is up, and a particular kind of consumer psychology is taking hold across every category on the market. It doesn't have a name yet, but economists will later call it premiumization. The idea is simple. If you charge more, it must be better. If it's better, it signals something about the person buying it. Cars, coffee, bottled water, a bottle of water. $3 for tap water in nicer packaging. And nobody questioned it. This is the world Sidney Frank walked into in 1996. Sidney Frank was 76 years old. He moved with a cane. He had a Maybach with a motorized sunroof. And he had one skill that almost nobody in business school teaches: the ability to see what people wanted to believe about themselves and then sell it to them at a markup. He had done it before. You know Jägermeister, that thick German herbal liqueur that used to collect dust in the back of your grandfather's cabinet. Sidney Frank took that bottle and made it the most ordered shot on college campuses across America. Not with advertising, with human contact. He sent promotional teams into every university bar in the country, handing out free shots, engineering word of mouth before the term existed. That experiment gave him the insight that changed everything. People do not choose what they drink based on taste. They choose based on the story they get to carry out of the bar. So Sidney looked at the vodka shelf in 1996 and saw something extraordinary. Here is what vodka actually is. Not the marketing version, the legal definition. In the United States, vodka must, by law, be a neutral spirit. That means no distinctive taste, no distinctive smell, no color. The technical objective of making vodka is to remove everything, all character, all flavor compounds. The higher the quality of distillation, by definition, the more the liquid tastes like absolutely nothing. Read that again. The better the vodka, the more it tastes like nothing. This is not opinion. This is federal law. And nobody on the entire premium vodka shelf was selling a $30 bottle of nothing. Nobody except Sidney Frank, starting right now. He called his product Grey Goose. The name came from an old unused wine project sitting in a filing cabinet. He sent his team to France, not because France has any vodka tradition, because it does not. Russia and Poland own that. But because the word France carries something in the human brain that no advertising can replicate. France equals Chanel. France equals Michelin stars. France equals things that cost more and are worth it. That is called country of origin bias. It is automatic. It is not a conscious decision. Your brain fires the association before you have time to question it. He priced the bottle at $30. Every other premium vodka sat between $15 and $17. That $13 gap was not a margin calculation. It was a signal that said everything below this bottle is ordinary. Psychologists call this the Veblen effect, named after economist Thorstein Veblen, who in 1899 described a category of goods where higher price actually increases desire. Because the price is not the cost of the product is the product. What you are purchasing is the right to say, out loud or silently, that you paid $30 for your vodka. That statement carries social information. It separates you, and that separation is worth $13 to millions of people every single weekend. Then he built what he called a supply chain, but what was actually a story architecture. Soft winter wheat from the Bacardi region of northern France. Spring water filtered through natural limestone from the Champagne area. A maître de chai, that means master blender, from the Cognac region. Cognac is where the most expensive French brandy in the world comes from. Suddenly, Grey Goose wasn't just vodka. It was practically wearing a beret. Every single detail in that story is technically true, and every single detail is irrelevant. The distillation process used by Grey Goose removes organic compounds from the grain, all of them. The limestone water filtration removes mineral content before the spirit is finished. The wheat variety, the farm location, the generational history of the farmers, none of it survives into the bottle. The science does not allow it. The supply chain was not a production choice. It was emotional content. Now here is where Sydney made his most important move, one that the previous coverage of this brand almost never talks about. He did not advertise to consumers. He advertised to bartenders. Grey Goose sales representatives paid bartenders directly, cash bonuses, for every customer who asked, "What's good?" and received the answer, Grey Goose. This was not a suggestion. It was a purchased recommendation wearing the face of expert advice. The person behind the bar is the trusted authority. They have no obvious reason to lie. You don't know there's money in their pocket with your order. That is manufactured trust, and it is the invisible engine that moved this brand faster than any billboard could. By 1998, Grey Goose entered a trade competition, the Beverage Testing Institute, and scored well. Sydney's team used that result everywhere. Wall Street Journal ads, trade publications, nightclub promotions. Grey Goose was now award-winning, official, validated. Here is what nobody told you about that award. Belvedere Vodka, a direct competitor, challenged the #1 tasting vodka claim in a legal dispute. The National Advertising Review Board examined the claim. The ruling? Misleading. Regulators intervened quietly. The core marketing claim on which the entire brand credibility rested had been judged inaccurate by a federal advertising watchdog. But by the time that ruling landed, Grey Goose had already wired itself into the cultural nervous system of America. September 2000 HBO. A character on a television show orders a drink. She adds 4 words that Sidney Frank never paid for and could never have planned. Make it Grey Goose. New York bars logged visible sales spikes within days. Within 2 years, Grey Goose was the fastest growing spirit in the United States. One scripted line in one fictional scene did what $20 million in print advertising had not managed. It made Grey Goose feel like a social fact, not a product. A reflex. By 2003, Grey Goose controlled 85% of the entire super premium vodka category in the United States, a category that had not existed in 1996. Sidney Frank did not enter a market. He manufactured one, then monopolized it. That is like building a toll road and then charging everyone else to drive on it. Then came the moment that changed everything. June 2004. Bacardi, one of the most powerful alcohol corporations on earth, owner of rum, gin, tequila, and whiskey portfolios across dozens of countries, sat across the table from an 84-year-old man with a cane. Bacardi wanted Grey Goose badly. Their own premium vodka attempt, a brand called Turi, had less than 1% market share. Grey Goose had cultural heat, bartender loyalty, celebrity association. Bacardi needed it. They pushed back on price. They wanted to negotiate. Sidney Frank did not negotiate. He slid a piece of blue cardboard across the table. On it, A name, Blue Goose. Same premium positioning, aimed directly at Bombay Sapphire, Bacardi's most valuable gin brand, their single most protected asset. Within 72 hours, Blue Goose trademark filings appeared in industry publications. Distributors started receiving inquiries. For a product that did not physically exist, Bacardi wired $2.2 billion in cash, a record for the single largest brand acquisition in the history of the spirits industry. And now, I am going to tell you what happened next, because this is the part nobody wants to explain out loud. Bacardi's legal and financial teams had done due diligence. That means they examined the books, the contracts, the litigation history. They would have seen the advertising rulings. They would have known about the Belvedere challenge. They would have read the blind taste test data, the same data showing Grey Goose ranked 8 out of 12 among professional tasters. A 2005 New York Times blind tasting described Smirnoff, which retails at $13, as the hands-down winner. Grey Goose did not place. Bacardi paid $2.2 billion for a brand whose core advertising claim had been ruled misleading, whose product ranked 8th in objective testing, and whose entire operating success depended on the personal, cultural intelligence of one man who was about to retire. That man was Sidney Frank. Sidney knew which bartender to call on a Tuesday in Manhattan, which nightclub mattered this month, and which one was already fading, which celebrity would carry the bottle authentically, and which one would look like a paid post. He did not have brand guidelines. He had instinct, accumulated over decades, running at full speed. Bacardi replaced that instinct with committees, with quarterly targets, with global brand consistency frameworks. The machine required a human operator. Bacardi installed a spreadsheet. And while Bacardi optimized, something was growing in Austin, Texas. His name was Tito Beveridge. That is his legal name. Tito made vodka by hand in a small shed using a pot still normally reserved for whiskey. No French origin, no frosted glass, no wooden crates. He priced it low. He called it handmade. He told the story of the American underdog. By 2017, Tito's crossed $1 billion in sales. By 2021, Tito's was the best-selling spirit in the United States. Not best-selling vodka, best-selling spirit across all categories: beer, whiskey, rum, tequila, everything. The brand Bacardi paid $2.2 billion for had been overtaken by a man in a shed with a different story. Here's the part that requires you to sit with it for a moment. Bacardi did not fail because they had a bad product. They had the same product they bought. They did not fail because the market for premium vodka collapsed. It did not. The premiumization train continued and accelerated across the 2000s and 10s. Bacardi failed because they misunderstood what they had purchased. They thought they bought a brand. They actually bought a moment, a specific convergence of cultural timing, human personality, and manufactured perception that had an expiration date baked in from the start. By the early 2000s, the cultural signal had rotated. Aspirational luxury no longer meant French and premium. It meant authentic and craft, local and real. The story that worked in 1997 had a shelf life, and Bacardi missed the rotation because nobody on their committee had Sidney Frank's instincts. The product was never the point. The story was always the point. And stories age. Now let's pull the lens all the way back. Because here's the question that the $2.2 billion acquisition actually answers. If a company the size of Bacardi, with armies of lawyers, financial analysts, brand strategists, and market research teams, could pay record money for a product whose core claims had been ruled misleading, whose blind test performance was mediocre at best, and whose entire value depended on one irreplaceable human, what does that say about the other premium things you're buying? The supplement brand with the clinical-looking label and the word engineered on the packaging. The skincare line charging €60 for ingredients that cost cents. The airline charging $180 extra and calling it premium economy. The university degree with the prestigious name on the outside and the same syllabus on the inside. Every single one of them runs the same operating system Sidney Frank built in 1996. Country of origin bias, price as signal, manufactured authority, trust purchased from the person standing between the product and your wallet. A 2008 study from the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, one of the world's most respected scientific institutions, put participants in brain scanners and gave them the same wine at two different stated price points. The group who believed they were drinking the more expensive wine showed measurably higher activity in the region of the brain associated with experienced pleasure. Not imagined pleasure, experienced. The neurons fired differently. The premium price did not just change their expectation, it changed their actual neurological experience of the drink. Same liquid, different number on the label, different brain. Grey Goose did not sell vodka. Grey Goose sold a neurological event, and Bacardi paid $2.2 billion to own the patent, then promptly forgot how to operate the machine. Which brings us to the most uncomfortable question in this entire story. If a vodka that ranked 8 out of 12 in professional blind testing can be sold for $2 billion based entirely on manufactured perception, and if a corporation with full knowledge of the misleading advertising claims can still consider that a reasonable purchase, then the problem is not the vodka. The problem is the gap between what things cost to make and what we are willing to pay because of how they make us feel. And that gap is not closing. It is getting wider in every category, every year, because the lesson that Sidney Frank proved in 1997 has been absorbed, replicated, and industrialized across the global consumer economy. You are not buying products. You are buying the stories attached to them. And the companies that understand that are not in the business of making things. They are in the business of